Get started.
I'm glad that Dr. Bishop has a teacher voice. First thing we're going to do is stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the second thing we're going to do is wish Miss Beth Ringel a very happy birthday.
And Sara Delgado.
And Dr. Delgado. Happy birthday. I'll start here.
It has to be two.
Just pass them around. And I did not make them,
So they're not nearly as good as the ones you
I wish they were coming. These are delicious. Thank you, Colleen.
Okay, so thanks everyone for coming, and I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Bishop.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This is our third of 4 meetings that we're going to have for the Parcells Common Area, so we appreciate all of you being here. I feel like every step of the way we have more and more of an opportunity as a team to collaborate to create something that's great for our students. I think the most important thing that we have to remember is that what we are doing are for our students. I know we have a lot of things in our head based upon our experience, but if we can make sure that we center the experience of our students and what we want them to be able to have, I think that's a great place for us to be. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Delgado in a second, and she's going to talk a little bit about the overall, not the process, but about the Bond Advisory Board, as far as what things came out of that, as far as how it elevates the work that we have here today. Of course, we want to make sure that your opinions, make sure that your thoughts are valued in the process. So please make sure today that you are sharing with us when we're going through, not only just this portion, but the entire meeting, what you're thinking as it relates to our students and teaching and learning. Remember, learning is our business, so that's what we need to be able to focus on with this space that we're creating at Parcells. I truly believe if we do it right, with kids in mind, it's going to be something that's going to be revolutionary. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, everyone. I was just whispering that I accidentally left the agenda sitting on my desk, so Ms. Agrusa just went to grab them and bring them back up to us. I apologize for that. So you'll have your paper agenda in a minute. But we're just going to start off, because last time, unfortunately, we had a conflict with the Parcells event, so a lot of you were not able to be here last time, specifically the Parcells parents. So we wanted to take a minute just to do a very brief recap of what we did last time, because we got ourselves to a really cool place of really trying to focus in on students and their experience at Parcells during the school day. So last time we were together, these were all separate slides, but we wanted to combine them into one just kind of recap slide of what we did. After the first meeting, there were a lot of questions when we did the surveys about why are we talking about this as a STEAM space? And why are we bringing this committee together if we've already decided it's a STEAM space? So we did a little bit of kind of backtracking and realized that those of you who were not part of the Bond Advisory Committee last spring didn't have that historical context or knowledge as to why we're even discussing this as a STEAM space to begin with. And so these are actual slides from the Bond Advisory Committee's work, which was 1 year ago, like right around this time, May of 2025. And so at the top, you can see that we covered a lot of different things about what different parts of the bond work might consist of, what we might do. And then on the top right, you can see we talked a little bit about the Parcells pool area. And at that point in time, we talked about if we should reopen this area as a pool, if not, what it could be. The bottom left, you can see that the Bond Advisory Council, actually we called it at the time, did take a survey, and one of the questions on the survey was, and this was after a few sessions of work, the question was, should the Parcells pool be reopened as a swimming pool? And that pie chart at the bottom represents names removed, that the answers were 91.7% of the Bond Advisory Council said no. Based on the information we had gathered as to the damage that was already there structurally, the cost it would take to reopen as a pool, as well as some comparatives of other middle schools in the area that did or didn't have pool facilities for their communities. So based on that, then we started talking about, bottom right, what we might do with the area. So you can see there, that's where the committee started having discussions about having a STEM lab, an imagination lab, creative classroom, art center. And so that was why when we came to you at the start of this committee, we came to you with all of those ideas already. Those came directly from the Bond Advisory Council. And so just to remember, when we came together for this, our role was to, sorry for giving you my back, was to, I feel like no matter where I turn, to gather inclusive representatives from various stakeholder groups, which all of you are, evaluate potential programmatic uses, which last session heavily focused on that second part there, and then finally deliver a community-informed recommendation to administration and the Board of Education for approval. So that's our focus. So everything I just talked about was pretty much the entire session last time in a nutshell. And then lastly, there's one more slide. So we did come together as a group with the Bond Advisory Council, and then based on your feedback from the first session on the surveys, we talked about making this an area that focuses on STEAM. We talked last time a lot about how your survey results from the first session heavily relied on the fact that not only should it be a STEM area, but mentioned the arts over and over again. So we wanted to make sure that A was added in there because your feedback was, hey, let's make sure we talk about the arts in this as well. And so with that, that's just a very quick summary of what we did last time for those of you who were unable to make it. Any questions about anything I've said at this point? Okay, so I'm going to turn it over then to the collaborative and they will take us on to next steps.
May I interrupt for 1 second? Before we do that, I forgot to ask if anyone wants to give a public comment. I don't see too many people out there, but I do see Mr. Nugent. Do you want to make a public comment?
I do.
Okay.
Kevin Nugent, Pointers for Academic Excellence. I wanted to say that good ideas are typically universal. Either committees make sense or they don't. This board shouldn't get to say policy and facilities committees are appropriate, but a finance committee suddenly isn't. It's just another example of this board selectively picking and choosing winners. We never hear your concerns about transparency or impropriety with other committees, yet those concerns always show up when finances are involved. Last night was a clear example of the problems that arise when budget discussions are held in public without prior discussion. One inaccurate comment from Trustee Worden about unfair labor practices, and a majority of the board ran for cover. Either you didn't know how to respond in the moment, or you were running away from a difficult question. Either way, the conversation turned from productive to foolish on a dime. Trustee Hall even went so far as to say that mere suggestion of a finance committee was part of a larger agenda, even though Trustee Cotton clearly said that Trustee Klepp could run it, as long as we had a finance committee. Trustee Cotton and Trustee Klepp made it clear, discussing how percentage increases affect the budget does not violate fair labor practices. Calling it that is wrong. Calling data-driven budget adjustments exaggerations, as Trustee Hall did, is wrong. Suggesting that talking through financial impacts of percent raises in negotiating in public is wrong. That is basic budget work that the board struggled to do in real time. The bigger problem is not the suggestion of a finance committee. Our central administration could benefit from clearer direction, and that doesn't come when trustees are unprepared at the board table for basic questions like how a percentage salary increase would impact the budget. We raised a concern yesterday about expanding legal expertise in the administration through the new central office position that Dr. Bishop created. At the time, the move seemed to forecast a greater impending legal issue on the horizon, but it's clear now why that was necessary. This board poses an imminent legal risk due to repeated, unsupported claims made at the board table. It shows tremendous foresight by Dr. Bishop to address the need to have a quasi-legal expert at the board table to clarify speculative legal questions by modifying the deputy superintendent role. Thank you, Dr. Bishop. To be clear, committees are a good thing. Having community members who had their pool taken away, were denied grants to support the loss of the pool, help make decisions about the replacement of that space is a good use of the committee's time and energy. Let's not limit committees to designing policies against donors in our district and instead use them to further discussions that benefit our school system. And for the record, the CFO prepares the numbers, but central administration builds the budget. Dr. Tuttle presented the structurally sound budget, and it should be recognized as such. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to make a comment? Okay, go ahead. Sorry that I interrupted you. I need to go out of turn.
No, thank you for keeping us on track here. So, I'm going to apologize right off the bat. You guys are used to Trey and Bree talking. Trey's out today, so you're stuck with me. But as a reminder, my name's Rich Brienik. I'm an architect, project principal, and Bree's going to do the fun stuff. I'm going to hit on a little bit of the initial. So, what you'll see on screen is we're going to talk a little bit about the visual listening, basically the survey that we had taken the very first meeting that we had with you all. So at the last meeting, if you were at the last meeting, some of the stuff was reviewed, so it's not going to be anything new to you, but just to recap and keep in that effort, we want to talk about what you're seeing on screen, which is really a consolidation of those results from the surveys that you'll see starts to focus in on STEAM areas, not STEM, but more STEAM areas, as well as being student focused, less community, more student, and talking about collaboration and flexibility as we look at these different areas. So various questions that were asked, and you'll see some relation to those on the right-hand side, but the left-hand side are the main themes that were taken away from those surveys that you'll start to see throughout these concepts. So concepts that we've shown you previously, and also concepts that you're going to see tonight. We skipped over really quickly the overall agenda for tonight, where this is meeting 3, and so now this is going to get a little bit more visual. You'll start to see an evolution of all this. We're going to show you a couple of options for floor plans today that build on these milestones presented, but then that's also going to flow into a 3D view. And so Bree's going to run through some 3D spaces. We understand that, us as architects, we look at plans all day long, but you may not do that. It's very hard to understand what these colored blocks on a page mean, so being able to actually fly through and get a look and feel of the space is very important. So that's to come here. It's a little bit more exciting. I don't know why we're clicking so fast, but we'll go backwards. Hurry up this, Andrea. This is a spoiler alert right here. You're going to see some plants and arrows too. So from the last time too, you see that we did a little bit of an exercise that was what we call dot exercise. So we had that board with a bunch of pictures on the board, and we had asked you to throw a green dot on an image that you like, throw a red dot on an image that you don't. So this is a picture of that we had scanned in really for record, but wanted to highlight the various milestones of items that you found favorable or items that you didn't. Things like flexibility, exciting, dynamic, those are all words that were brought out from that, but you also wanted to stay away from more stark spaces. As we look at these concepts, we want to make sure that it is innovative, it's engaging, the students want to use this space. We failed if at the end of the day the students don't want to go there, you can't use it for your teaching curriculum. So sticking to these themes are going to be very key to everything we're looking at. So we hope we start to show you that we're going in that direction here, and we're going to start to kind of roll into some of the floor plan changes, some of the concept options, and the 3D flyover of these. And to start out, we feel like we've shown you a lot of, here's the Parcells pool, and here's what these spaces could look like, some colored blocks within there, but we haven't really zoomed out to show you the overall scale of it. You'll understand there's the school as it sits, with Parcells pool being right there as it pops up on screen. So getting the contextual relation of the site versus where you're utilizing the space is very key, because we're also understanding as we dig into it ourselves, we can become more ingrained with the district, with the community, realizing that things like entry points start to become critical. So the little arrow that just popped up there is going to hit on an entry point that seems very obvious and what we've been planning on being the main entry into this pool space. But through these meetings and understanding the district, we've understood that there's an agreement with the library in that area, and so that parking lot you see just to the west of the school may not be able to be utilized, especially during daytime hours. Maybe after hours you can utilize it for events, but during the day you may not be able to. So as we think about the planning, we also want to start to consider, all right, where could you utilize a main entry throughout the entirety of the day? So this eastern entry is also an access point. It's all important because now we need to figure out how people can get into the space and flow through it, whether it is before or after hours. So on screen right now is a more black and white floor plan. And so you'll see there's that western entry that's coming from the library side, the parking side, with the eastern entry being notified as well. Now, a couple things to point out. So this is Parcells pool, holistically into the plan. And then the other item that we haven't talked about that we want to make sure everyone understands we're keeping in relation with all this, because it is part of the overall bond projects, is considering the art area. So art has been identified as a main factor within all this planning. Everyone's kind of said in the survey, everyone really pointed to, we need to get art put into STEM. We need to make sure that we're accounting for that within this overall concept. And so the current art space is being considered to shift into this area. And now in place of that, there's also a need by the district for a new IT hub. And so your current IT hub sits just below that art room in the basement area. So now reutilizing that space and bringing it up top is going to get you a lot better really safety for your overall IT hub, as well as access to it for your main feed coming into it, feeds coming out of it. Additionally, there's a receiving dock right adjacent to it, allowing your maintenance and IT utilize that space. We know it's not as exciting as some of the images and 3Ds that Bree's going to show you in a minute here, but it is important just to note that we haven't lost track of the IT hub and how that's going to relate with art that is further incorporated into here. Now, as we start to zoom in on the parcels pool and how this relates with access, this is really just getting to be a large plan. You'll see that key plan in the bottom right corner that outlines on the overall we're looking at. And you'll see the main entry on the western face coming in, which seems like the natural entry point. We want to make sure we can accommodate from both sides. So now this door that we're pointing at on the eastern side, that's also going to be utilized as a main contributing factor into this zone. Now we're understanding that this is going to be used during school hours, but may be utilized after hours as well for clubs, various activities, and you have a really good synergy that gets created between the gym space and now with the pool, which will be the steam continence area, being able to feed off of one another for events. So if we can look at where that little dash line just popped up, looking at access control at that point, and basically access control of putting in new door hardware and limiting people to get into the school area, now you can close down the rest of the school from this area of work over creating that overall synergy between the two spaces and access from both the east and west sides of the site. And then as we start to look at the core, when you get to that entry point, we also want to point out a few less fun items in here, but really necessary of trying to close off the space. So you'll see the two black lines at the stairway areas. Right now that's open to get into the school, so we'd be looking at trying to wall that off, and that's further to allow for egress and utilization of the stair, but limiting people being able to get into the school area. And then the two yellow blocks that you see on screen, the one on the left are two existing restrooms, but neither one is accessible. So if we can combine the two and utilize that square footage, now we can create one accessible restroom for this area and really for your students and your staff and everyone else. The yellow block to the right is an existing elevator shaft that's very underutilized and it's undersized for safety, security, and accessibility. So we are also looking at an elevator component within the project to maintain that 2 stories that's required. We want to make sure that everything we're doing is staying up to code and it's being overall accessible for anybody utilizing the space. So keep in mind those 2 initiatives. I apologize for all the boring, but I'll turn it to Bree. She's going to show you a lot more excitement.
Yeah, so I'm going to show a couple plans and then I'm going to bounce back to my computer because I need to, when we do the fly through, I'm literally going to be flying through the model live so we can kind of see what it looks like. But just wanted to recap what are a couple of plan options that we have been reviewing this last couple times. So again, this is that kind of same spreadsheet that just goes over the square footages of each of these spaces that we're looking at. And the 2 concepts that we're kind of coming up with and dialing in on right now are the focused learning and then the collaboration exchange. So really the difference between that is that the focused learning has a bit more square footage allocated to dedicated learning spaces, while the collaborative exchange has more square footage dedicated to open collaboration, not necessarily programmed or defined space. So that's kind of the differences between the 2 plans, and this is just kind of showing where those square footages are being allocated for. So this first floor plan, this is the focused learning floor plan. So this is very similar to some plans that we've seen in the past, and I'll just kind of walk us through the space. So you'll see the basement level on the left, and first floor plan or the entry level on the right. And when you come in on the entry level first floor plan, I'm going to point to the screen on the left, I apologize. But there are a set of double doors that you would come in, and you'd be entering into that space and be able to look down into the basement level. So that white box that you see is a floor opening that would look down into that basement level. We did reorient the stairs a little bit. Previously they were shown on the other side of the floor plan, but reorienting them helps get some fire code stair issues and travel distances solved for us. So moving that helps with that, but we also feel like it just kind of helps open up the space a little bit more, and you're able to see a bit more of a connection between those 2 spaces. You'll see a couple of seating collaboration areas sprinkled along the outside on this entry-level floor plan, and then the southern portion of the plan is really clustered with those 3 classroom spaces, being art, a STEM space, and then a maker space that will be attached to that. So you can see we're starting to show what those connections could start to look like between the spaces, between those classrooms. I think feedback on that is something that we'd be looking for today. How do you think you'd be using the space? If there needs to be connections between these spaces, how do we envision these spaces being used? So that's kind of the first floor plan for the focused learning scheme. And then as we go to the basement level, so you go down those stairs that we were just talking about, and you'd be entering into a seating and collaboration area. So it's a kind of an open lounge space that students could be doing various group tasks together. A teacher could send a group of students out there together to be learning, or somebody could just be making up a test or doing whatever. And then the rest of the space is really programmed through a couple different STEM spaces. So we've got maybe a more robotics focused STEM space. There's an open learning space that would be connected to that. And then another STEM space that could be maybe a more visual listening or visual type space. Also a couple huddle rooms sprinkled in there as well. So, and just to kind of re-energize our brains on what these spaces could look like, we did want to flash through a couple of images of just what we're thinking as we're looking at these different spaces and what all these colored blocks are. This is kind of what we're thinking is what it could look like. So those huddle spaces, this is an image that was on that visual listening board. This is kind of what we're envisioning for that. Maybe it's glass, you can kind of see into those small collaboration spaces, but it's a closed off space that students could use for a group project. That that STEM classroom that's more of that visual classroom, maybe it's a very active learning style. Maybe it's something where the teacher is in the center of the classroom. There's a variety of different types of technology in this space. There's whiteboards, there's digital technology. There's highly flexible in this classroom as well. Thinking about the maker space and the open learning spaces, maybe it could look something like this, where there's a lot of different flexibility that could happen. This is truly one of those messy maker spaces, but even though it's called Messy Maker, it might not necessarily look messy all the time. It could just be something where a lot of creativity could happen in those spaces. Again, maybe it's a space, enough open space where there could be a robotics play zone or a robotics arena, if you will, that would be able to be used and maybe be even permanently there if there's enough space. And again, just looking at some different STEM classrooms, what those might look like, having different varieties of types of seating, highly flexible, a lot of power and cord wheels, the integration of technology, maybe what that maker space could look like as well, with a connection into another space. And then art classrooms. What are we thinking for the art classrooms? What do we want? Group tables? Do we want something more like this, where we're all standing in one line, having a variety of seating heights? So just thinking through what those spaces could look like and trying to get some visuals of what we're thinking as we're looking at these plans. And I will say, they're going to get a lot more fun when we go through the 3D. So all of this will make a lot more sense when we're flying through. And then I'm just going to go through quickly the next plan. So this is the collaborative exchange. This is the one that has a bit more open space dedicated to open collaboration. So you'll see that in that light purple color. As we go into the first floor plan level, you'll enter into those same double doors that we were entering before. And instead of having that floor opening right in the middle of the floor space, we've moved that and shifted it over to the western side of the floor plan. And what that does is it just creates a different type of visual connection between those two floor plans. You'll kind of see what that starts to look like in the 3D. Again, same types of programs on this first floor. We've got our STEM classroom, a connected makerspace, and an art classroom as well. One thing to keep in mind with this floor is that this is where the connection to the outdoors can be something that's a little bit stronger. So you'll see in the 3D there's some clear story windows existing within the space. There could be opportunity to maybe bring those down to the floor level and get a bit more natural light into those spaces. And then as we go down to the basement level in this option, you're opening up into a large open collaboration seating area. A lot more space than the one before, and you kind of see what that looks like. Again, a couple huddle room spaces tucked in there, a STEM space for the lower level as well. And then one space that we wanted to talk about, because there was a little bit of interest on the visual listening that we did last week, was a
I turned the timer on for that. I'm so sorry.
You're fine, thank you. Was a 360 room, a learning and discovery studio, if you will. So this is a space that we would envision could be a circular space that would have projection mapping onto the walls. It's kind of that one where you were talking last week about you can jump right into the nucleus of a cell. You can jump right into the streets of Paris and be walking the streets of Paris. This one is large enough that a classroom of students could fit in there. This is a rather large one. And what this does is you're actually able to go into a pre-function space where you're able to take off your backpack, your coat, whatever you might have. Maybe there's some props or equipment that are needed for whatever sort of immersion you might be doing. And you're able to store those in there and then go into the Learning and Discovery Studio. So this could be a very interesting resource that the school could have. But again, we wanted to just kind of talk through if this is an idea that we wanted to explore, if we wanted to, if this would be something that we see Grosse Pointe utilizing. So that's kind of the floor plans. Oops. I'm going to jump through a couple of inspiration images for these again. Again, huddle room, example of huddle rooms, an example of another STEM space. Maybe it's highly technology rich, with a lot of those board reels, very flexible furniture. This is an example of that Learning and Discovery Studio where there could be more projection mapping onto those walls, what that could look like. The art classroom. What are we imagining for that art classroom? Is it a ceramics classroom? Is it a general art classroom? What are the types of things that we think are lacking in the district that we might need? Or that might be a good opportunity to explore. Again, that makerspace. Maybe it's something that's more 3D printing. Is that something that is needed? We've heard some 3D printing. We've got some 3D printers that are maybe not in use. So is this something that would be a resource? Is it more a messy makerspace instead? Again, what do those STEM classrooms look like? Is it a variety of different types of furniture? Are there whiteboards? These are some of the examples that we're thinking. All right, gonna jump to the 3D fly-through. Please forgive me for any clunkiness within here. I'm gonna switch up my programs. Yeah. Okay. That's my dog. Okay. So, I'm going to start from the outside. So this is as if we're standing outside of those double doors before.
Which option?
Just the west side?
This is, excuse me.
It's the west side, coming from the media center area, yeah.
Yep, and this is coming from the parking lot actually. So this is going up those couple of steps that would take us from the parking lot, the western side. Thank you, Rich. So as you come in, there's normally those two doors for the bathroom. This is where we're combining them into the one. Here's the door into that elevator service closet area as well. These are the doors that would take you back to that shared corridor that would go back to the gym. So that's kind of where we're standing. And then as you turn to the right, that's what enters you into the STEAM Commons. So when you go into the right, this is that first option. This is the, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name again. The learning, the one that's more focused on what'd you say?
This is focused learning,
Focused
not
learning.
collaborative?
Yes,
Right,
thank
okay.
you. Thank you, focused learning. The more learning focused one. As you come in, you can see, you look left and you look right, and there's a big hole down in the middle, gaining that collaboration and that connection to the lower level. You'll either walk to the left or the right, and you can see some of that, that open seating that would be along these areas as well. But really along that back wall is where you start to see those classrooms tucked in. So we've got a STEM classroom here. Maybe there's a lot of glass that would look in. We think that this would be very successful as you're letting in a lot of this natural daylighting. This is where we would be able to take down some of those walls or some of those windows potentially and be able to open that up and get even more natural light in. You can see we're starting to show what it might look like for some of the connections between these spaces, having an operable wall that could fold in and out to connect these when you want to, but close it when you need separate spaces. As you continue down the hall, you can see what some of the views into those spaces might look like, and the art classroom as well. And then I'll jump down the stairs and just show what this would look like as we're going down the stairs. And again, feel free to jump in, and if you have questions about what anything is, please ask.
As we go down the stairs, we're opening up into the open collaboration space. So you can see this is where a lot of that loose furniture would be. Groups of students could hang out in here and do group activities together. We've got an open learning area that could be connected to a STEM classroom space. Right now, we're showing this just open to the rest of the space, but still kind of closed in its own area. This might be wants to have glass in front of it and a door. So I think these are some things that we'd be open to suggestions or open to feedback on. And then you can also see we've got some huddle spaces tucked in here as well, and then one more classroom tucked underneath the stairs. Yeah.
Simple question: is each of these sections not independent climate control zones? Because
Each of those rooms.
yes.
Yeah, we'd be looking at more like an air handler, rooftop air handler, with like BOEs between the rooms. So each one would have its own thermostat there. There's usually set points that let you go 2 degrees up, 2 degrees down, so you don't go crazy with it. But
Just one.
each one has its own. Yes.
All right. And then I can flip to the next option, but I want to pause here if anybody has any other questions, and I can flip back and forth, but if anybody has any other questions before I go to the next floor plan. Okay.
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
The upstairs had kind of the recording walls. We saw the ability to do that wall. Is that something that could be an option on the basement level as well?
Yes.
So these same rooms potentially could be openable or not, depending on how we design it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, items like that, like it'll be key that those, a lot of these items, glass and drywall, they're not overly expensive. Those walls are very expensive, and so that'll be a very fine balance of like budget versus the entirety of the area. So we may have to kind of focus in on a few key spots for it, a few moments that really make sense to have them. But that's also something we can weigh against dollars for the project. So,
Yeah.
How far is that drop from the second floor down to the first?
The floor-to-floor heights. So the overall floor-to-floor heights, we might have to do a little bit of finagling.
Mm-hmm.
There might end up being a slight ramp that takes us from this entry level up to here, just because the floor-to-floor height does get a little tricky. The lower level is only probably about 10 feet right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
As in, like, if a child threw him or herself over that, they would drop 10 feet?
it'd be more. So
yeah.
it's like 10 feet to finish floor.
Yeah.
Or bottom
Okay.
structure, I should say. So you're probably by the time you get to your railing, you're looking at 50 feet.
And the railing is probably like way up high.
It is. It's
Yeah.
all code compliant.
Yeah.
Like, there's certain heights that we have to maintain
Yeah.
for code for railing heights as well. So see, it's all glass, so you want to make sure you don't have so much space between for a head to fit through. Anything
Yeah,
like
right,
that.
okay.
Mhm.
So it is all compliant.
Yes.
We're doing everything per code. We're
Yes.
not do that.
Just thinking of our 11 and 12-year-old friends.
Yeah.
They like a jump.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's good for the egg drop though.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. That is fun for egg drop.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay.
And as Bree is switching over, because I know it'll take her a second, please know, like this, you see a white box model is what we call it. There's
Thank
no
you.
materiality or color to it. That's intentionally done so you're looking at it more spatially and thinking about the areas. At our next meeting, we're going to take these concepts and consolidate the ideas into one that will be a lot more refined. So you'll start to see more finished representation and what it could be. So right now it's more think about the space and the feel of it.
Yes. Yeah, we find that it's sometimes easier to just look at it as a just gray box in general to get more of the feel of the form of what's actually happening in the space rather than getting hung up on individual colors. So again, starting at that same entry space from the outside, we're coming in from the parking lot on the western side. We've got our restrooms and elevator, and we turn to the right. And so this is that secondary option where there's a bit more open collaboration. So one thing to note, you'll see this door here on the left. This is actually to help get some fire access out to this. We need 2 exits out of this space. So this is an additional exit, and there was one in the last plan as well that I didn't highlight. But just the layout of this plan, you can kind of see it a little bit more. It makes it a little bit more obvious that there's something there. But as you come in, we'd be entering into an open collaboration area, and then some of those classroom spaces clustered around there. So you can see we've got a maker space that opens into a STEM classroom. Maybe it's got some of those operable walls that would connect them to each other. Again, we've got some of those windows getting some natural daylight in. And then we are showing art up here again as well, and what that could start to look like. That small closet that you see in the back is storage for art. We know there's always a ton of supplies and different things that they need to keep maybe away from students as well. So this could be a special storage area that they might need. If it wants to be if there needs to be a kiln in there as well, that could be where the kiln goes as part of that. And then as you kind of come around, you'll start to see how this opens up onto that western side of the floor plan. So rather than having that opening right in the center and being faced with it when you first come in, this one kind of shifts it over to the side, and you kind of opening up onto the one side of the floor plan. So as you would come down the stairs, you'd be entering into a very large open collaboration space. So this area here is kind of this lovely 2-story, very open, very airy space. You could do a lot of large-scale experiments in this space, egg drops, like Rich said, as well. We've got a couple of huddle spaces clustered underneath that floor right there. And then really, as you kind of go under this ceiling area, we start to get to maybe a bit more still open learning, but maybe classrooms of people could be in here. It's just a larger space and could be used for a lot more flexible type learning. You'll start to see this curved wall. So this is where we're talking about that learning and discovery studio. So that's where this curved wall, you kind of see what that starts to look like from the outside. And I'll fly in there. So this is where you would enter into the pre-function space. So this is where there could be some coat hooks and storage. You know, we've got a special storage room as well, in case anything needs to be locked up. And then this is where you would enter into that space. So this is what that could start to look like. The projection mapping would be along the walls. You start to get lost a little bit. And then you would enter or exit out of that space as well. And then exit the same way you came in. And then just to kind of finish up this floor plan, over on the side we've got another STEM classroom clustered under here. Could open up and have some open type learning within this space, sharing this open space, and then a couple of additional huddle spaces clustered under here as well. So those are really our 2 floor plans and the 3D fly-through. I can bring up the floor plans again and have that on the screen, but our next thing is really to just do some of that pairing and sharing and discuss. So I think if we wanted to maybe take a break and you guys can talk as groups at your tables and really go through what you kind of thought of these plans and talk through what you were thinking, and then maybe we'll do a little report out at the end.
We got 10 minutes in and then 5 minutes.
Yeah. So would you guys prefer the 3D being up or the floor plan options? We have one that has both of them compared next to each other. The floor plans? Okay. I'll flip to that. What you guys thought, and we can pull up the 3D and we can talk through whatever, but yeah, so just wanted to kind of talk through our thoughts on different things. So why don't we start here? Group of 3.
What do you got? Go ahead.
Some of the discussion here was focused on what are you going to do with the makerspace, because there is literally a makerspace 200 feet from that in the library basement right now, which is staffed. If you're going to duplicate that, how are you going to staff it for community access? Okay.
Okay.
And the other thing is, how is that going to be different from the wood shop and the metal shop that's already somewhere else in the building? And people make stuff there. Okay. So
I think we'd be wanting to look to have that conversation with you, like what would be missing if you already have that type of.
Well, you have to talk to the teachers for that, or the teacher that does that, and
Okay.
the faculty there.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be good to understand like who's going to be living in the space full time. And,
Yeah.
You know,
Or-
what are their needs?
or- if you're gonna make a makerspace and it's gonna
Right.
be duplicative of what's already in the shop spaces there,
Right.
maybe you wanna move the shop spaces into this space, just like you move the art classroom into this
Right.
space, so you're not duplicating
Right.
stuff.
Oh, yeah. And so that way there's built-in staff or faculty potentially
Well,
during
during
school
the
hours
day,
at least.
but then how do you control access if you want that community space after? I don't, yeah.
Yeah, do you want to open to the community or not? A lot of times we find these maker spaces, they've got sensitive equipment in there where you want to lock it off, some students aren't allowed in, also, community members, you don't want to take either.
Yeah. Good
Can I
comment.
jump in on that too?
Of course.
We had some dialogue at our table about the makerspace, and we've been getting some input from our staff members, and they agree that that space might not necessarily be what we need, and they don't necessarily know what we use it for.
No, it's good.
Yeah,
That was your work.
at least one other comment I remember is this projection room. That kind of reduces the utility of a lot of the space around it. And is it going to be used by teachers?
It's a good question. Yeah. Is it something that would be used?
And would it be used 10 years from now? Would it be still, usable? Technology be outdated, and then we'll have to find another bond or something to get it updated again in 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the comments. Okay. Table 2, do you guys want to report out of some findings that you guys were talking about?
Is the plan to move the art room, like the whole art room, or a secondary art room?
The entire art room, so the plan is to move it in its entirety into this space, and then we'd have a lot more focused conversation, with the art instructor of the school of what do you need within that space, and then we look at square footages, we look at storage, we look at things like the kiln room versus supplemental storage that's closed off from the students. So there's a lot of discussion. Art rooms are complex and what they need, but it would be the entirety, because then we would take that entire space for the IT hub.
Yeah.
We also talked a little bit about the second plan. There's someone's space right there, so if another class comes in, they're interrupting that space, and then we go down the stairs, there's another space right there, so they're getting that class is also getting interrupted. But the first floor plan has a bit more uninterrupted space.
How does sound, right? There's going to be a lot of individuals ideally right in here at one time. How does sound from classroom to classroom, collaborative space, how is that captured throughout? Is there an echo as it goes to the stairwell? The group's coming in, we don't want to be distracted by others, so we have to close the door all the time. What does that look and sound like?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think the second plan, the collaborative exchange, would definitely be a more active sounding space with a bit more of that open collaboration area.
Yeah, we use a lot of materiality too. Of we'd look at it acoustically, like these spaces. Of you could easily put a ceiling in any space. That's a pretty easy solution. But more industrial zones like this, and if you want to go for that look, it's a lot more of tectum paneling and getting into more acoustic baffles that can be hung from the structure above to break up the sound. The whole point is to diffuse the sound, so sound reverberating throughout. And so there's a lot of materials that we look at through these. You're not seeing them in that fly through. We haven't gotten to that point, but you're absolutely right. These are it'd be an echo chamber if we don't do anything.
Yes.
I agree with your concerns about the technology cost and how obsolete it would be, but that to me is the only wow innovative element. It's all going to be new and beautiful and a better use of the space, but not unusual to other areas. That it's that's to me the wow factor. That's the innovation.
And if I remember correctly, I think in our last meeting there was a number for the screen, a price tag on that one, which seems a little bit over our budget. So I was curious if it's a projection screen or it's actually more of a visual screen, almost a collection of, I don't want to call them TVs, but something you might see in a stadium, right? Creating a larger screen.
Yeah. So my understanding of the product is that there's a series of projectors that would be in the ceiling in kind of the center, and they're kind of all pointing outward. The walls themselves are really just painted drywall. There's a special paint that they have to use, but they're really just painted drywall. A lot of the dollars is in the technology of the projectors.
And is there any opportunity, I understand it's drywall, right? for interaction. If we're zooming in on a cell for a teacher to go up and highlight right next to it, mitochondria or whatever we're focusing on, is that an opportunity in that
Yes,
space as well?
yeah, and I do have the website of the company that makes this pulled up, and I can kind of, they have a video that kind of flies through this video document that shows you how you can zoom in and out, how it moves. There's different levels too, like if it projects onto the floor versus not, that kind of affects the price again as well, and some different things. So there's levels, there's tiers with it.
And we have found too, we had another school where we did this, and we were looking at video boards, and if you do a series of monitors and just the technology to try to get all those monitors to sequence together, and the racking that it takes for that's very, very expensive. Like, this is more economic than trying to do like a monitor wall. So we've done them both, but it seems like this is more economic. That it just depends on the package you take. Like Bree said, if you're going to project onto the floor, it's a lot more money just to get more of the material to allow you to do that. So
What's the projected life and maintenance cost of equipment like that? Because that's not going to come out of this budget. That's going to come out of the OpEx budget.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I don't think I'm going to be able to provide an answer of exactly what that would be for you, but it is something to consider. I think as we're talking about this, there would be a maintenance issue with it. Who's kind of maintaining that space? Who's in charge of reservations? And who would there be? We talked last time about professional development for teachers of how to use this space to make sure they feel comfortable going in there. So yeah, it would be an investment.
Yeah, we can do a cost analysis. On the system. Things like you talk about turf is the most prevalent one everyone thinks about. That you got to change the carpet out every 10 years or so, depending on where. And this is similar. It is LED driven, so it's not the bulb style projection you had to replace years ago. So it does get more life to it. But we can definitely we'll talk to manufacturer. And we can do a cost schedule on it.
Yeah.
Could they have someone from like the teaching staff here, like evaluate one at another school somewhere?
Yeah.
To kind of get their impression of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've got a few examples of it. We've worked at Grove Eels, our most recent. We're working in the media center right now where they have one of these systems. We did an installation out of Hills just across the border in Toledo. And so if there's a group that wants to go visit any of these, want to see anything, we've could take you around to a few schools in the areas you're looking at. So that's definitely something up to administration. All that's separate for me to say, but
Or just get feedback on what they think. Like, are they glad they did it, or do the costs outweigh the benefits of it, or are they like, wow, this was a big mess because it's a lot to maintain.
Right. Awesome. Okay. Thank you for your feedback. Okay, table 1. Let's talk about what you guys chatted about. Does anyone want to report out?
I'll start. So we talked a little bit about, specifically in the more collaborative model, access and safety. One of our big priorities, obviously, is to maintain the security of all of our classrooms. So what would that look like in an open space like that? Because we have the expectation for our doors to be locked and secure. How would we make that happen in a space like that?
yeah, I can jump in a little if you
Yeah, go ahead.
Nope. Safety and security. It's prevalent in every single project we work on. We always talk about like layers of security and starting from the outside and working your way in. So whenever we're working on schools, we try to think about the first layer being the outside. And so as you come in from the outside, it could be, your doors want to be secure, obviously. Do you do a secure vestibule where you got the bullet resistant glass on the inner wall and you have to get buzzed into the school, or have a Prox card to get into it? There's that first initial level. Additionally, on the outside, we always look at glass being more laminated glass. Bullet resistant is horribly expensive. And so you can't do it everywhere. So you try to pick a few key places to do that, but then having windows that are higher so they're less accessible, and then keeping a more laminated glass or school guard type glass so you can't bust through it. You could hit it with a rock, you hit it with a bat, it's like your car windshield. That's another layer there. As we get into the space, we do a lot of analysis on access control throughout the various zones of a school. And so we're really only working in this zone, so it's different. But holistically, if you think about security lockdown, having those access doors like the slide we had shown where you can enter in here, you can enter in here, and there's that dashed line. That's all an effort to let's close down this section of the building, but then further, let's close down this section where the STEAM Commons is. So if there is a security threat, you're locking this area off of the rest of the school, but you're still providing access for people to escape. which is another layer. And then when you get into the space, that's where we start to talk about locking for classrooms. That's a big discussion we're going to have with Ben. He's going to be very, very bored that day about, do doors, every time they shut, do they lock? Do you have it to where there's a paddle on there that says lock versus not?
Is there closers?
Exactly. And then what's the district standard that we really need to align with?
And thinking through the logistics of that, like every time somebody new uses that space, they'll have to sign out a key, and there's going to have to be a whole process.
And there's a lot of digital components now. We have a school in Freeland that we're working on where we're changing all their locks to like products. Everyone has kind of a little key that they wear, all the instructors, and they walk up to the door and hit it, and however you carry it around. But it makes it to where you can track like the doors being locked, or also lock everything down at one time. So there's benefits, things we can do.
That hallway, where our hallway connects to the gym hall, I really like that hash mark that was brought up on the blueprint. You can isolate the school from that hallway in that section of the building if you have to. And I think that's very, that's positive.
Yeah, yes, sir. It's good.
We also talked about community access after hours. Currently at the moment it's really hard to get access to the schools unless you're an employee. So we're always chasing a janitor or something to open the door up for us. So any kind of electronic thing that we could, like, I'm a coach, use my RF badge, let me in certain hours of the night when we have booked that space to be using for that sort of programming, and other community groups that may be using it as well.
Absolutely, yeah, that'll be part of that discussion we have, is it a prox card, or we do a lot, if you have the prox card, you have electricity going to that door, so it ties into your access control, so we put on a schedule.
Yes.
So say you want it open from 5 to 7, on this day you can set it when the door opens, and it automatically locks at 7. So that's just getting into your system and programming it that way, it's all doable.
And then the other thing we talked about is storage. These STEAM activities, we have to store a lot of parts, a lot of robots, a lot of your group. And so incorporating that into the spaces so that it can be stored for one group and then switched over to the other group, put their stuff away, and now it's the other group's turn to bring out their item.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do wonder, like, as we talk about, like, the makerspace discussion came up of, a number of you said, like, it's not going to be utilized, so maybe it means it's not as exciting as everything else, but maybe it is more of a series of storage areas that are accessed from the different sides, so you could close off and almost utilize that space for storage. It's not the most exciting, but if you have multiple needs that want to be,
It's incredibly necessary.
Yeah.
I think you got to see when we went down to
exactly.
how much stuff we have. And also the tool protection. These spaces, at least for first robotics and other major things, we'll be needing a drill press and band saws and things like that. Things that you need to restrict access to so that we don't have all fingers in
So
there
you
at
don't
the same
want
time.
students there. Yes,
Definitely.
sir.
Definitely.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is the only bathroom outside of this space? It's only in that hallway, correct? That is the only bathroom?
That's the only one within this area. Now, as you get into the school, there's more. So during the day, there's access to them. And now if you lock off those halls, that's the only one in the area. And we could look at further access to some of them as needed, but...
A water fountain.
Yeah,
Oh, for sure.
absolutely. Oh, yeah, no.
We'll make sure.
I'll make a note, but yes, it is required.
First thing I
want
want to do, make it
Yes,
get
sir.
the
Yes, totally.
And for those bathrooms, the ideas were to combine those two areas, correct?
Yeah, because they're both, you have two small ones, but neither one's accessible. And so if we can combine them and make one accessible restroom, just because it takes so much space to be fully accessible, but you want to be an inclusive space. And so
that one room would be utilized by both staff and students then?
yes. And we can take a look if it's, everyone finds it important. We can start to look at, we're going to have plumbing in that area. So trying to find a spot to carve out another restroom. If that, that may be an important point for this, and we can certainly look at that.
So what about or was consideration given to the locker rooms that are accessible on the bottom level, the restrooms, and then
Yeah,
in the space.
I think that's a great point, is that there are existing locker rooms down there. So if the plumbing's already down there, I think we could look at potentially putting something down there as well.
That just wasn't necessarily in the scope of the project. So I gotta look out for scope creep too. Like, we'd love to redo the locker rooms for you too, but I think that's something that gets important. We could look at a section of that though, and maybe it makes sense to start incorporating.
I know we're getting close on time, so I want to be mindful of everybody's evenings, but this was kind of the last little bit of what we had. Any other closing thoughts before we kind of wrap up for the night?
Can we go back to the image real quickly? I have one quick question. I think it's a quick question.
Which image? This one here? Yeah.
The round room, we affectionately named the sauna. Does it have to open to that closed back closet space? Can that open to the open collaborative space instead of having to like go down a hallway and into that pre-space?
It could. So the benefit of having that space is it also creates a light lock. So as you're kind of going in and out, it's not going to disrupt any sort of projection as you're opening that door up. So that's kind of the other benefit of that. But we could.
And the casework, like you saw that casework lined up. Whenever we're doing these rooms, a lot of times they ask you to take your shoes off in the space, and then you don't want kids in there with their bags hitting that wall. It's very finely finished. So we usually use that casework of that space as here's where you can drop all your stuff. All right, go ahead and head in, come back out, and all your stuff is still secure.
But if the concern is
the prep room, I agree we all understood the need for the prep room, but having it like off the back corner kind of closed off the whole right half of that diagram, right? It's just when we look through it, even on the 3D fly through, coming down the stairs, big open space except for right there, that round wall, that's the other half of the room, right? It kind of closed everything off. So if there was a way to integrate it and stay open, I think may kind of unlock some of the other potential.
Yeah, I think we could look at a couple different options for that, making that feel a bit more open. Yeah. Hold on, I wanted to go to him because he had one question.
I do remember last year, as part of Bond Advisory Committee, something brought up about the challenge of the lunch rooms and how is this utilization of this space, is that alleviated or has it been addressed? Forgive me if I may have missed that.
The lunchrooms?
The lunch in terms of like it was limited or if there was a need for some sort of support to alleviate that pressure. Is this space and then other space being reutilized, will that alleviate or help the problem?
If we
or?
turned this into like more of a multi-purpose room space, it would definitely help, but I don't think that addresses like the academic portion that I think the advisory council, you know what I mean? I love that.
I want to make sure that we
yes, please.
No, because I know that was last year that was brought up as a discussion point, and so much is going on. I'm like, did we ever touch it?
I'm remembering that. It was like one of the
Yes.
several options
Yes.
that was brought up for the space. Like, could it alleviate some of the overcrowding at lunchtime?
That's what I was wondering. Like,
Yeah, good question.
are we addressing that in some form?
I think so. I think we're getting creative with providing some more structured opportunities during lunchtime. And if we go with maybe that more collaborative space, that provides more opportunities for students who don't want to go outside or whatever. They can go do clubs or they can go quiet read or.
My focus was you as the administrators. Does this space utilization open up more opportunities? That's what I'm looking at.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
And then,
Some type of screen immersion excites me greatly because we have so many pieces of artwork that are incorporated into our curriculum already. And so if someone is getting ready to teach a new concept and that's there, I would love for a teacher to have a place to go check out a screen room, to immerse their kids in what they're about to learn. It's also really great access for like students who struggle with reading or struggle with math. Any student can come in and talk about artwork with us. It's really great. Hearing you say like that the walls can be easily scratched, that really, really scares me.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, backpacks outside is not gonna stop kiddos from rubbing up against the walls and so on and so forth. So durability is just very, very key here. And then because I'm thinking very specifically of the screen, because a lot of the artwork is predetermined and already defined and organized for our curriculum, can it be incorporated into this type of screen? I'm not so sure about that, but some type of massive screen room is very exciting for that, but we need to like be able to plug our laptops in and flash it up there. Kind of that is what is happening right now. It's already built in to the software that we have access to with our curriculums is what I'm thinking.
Okay. So we're hearing durability, and then ease of access.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like if this beautiful room comes with a selection of artwork that can be used in it, that's not going to probably meet what we need. If you know, if we're about to start module 3 of arts and letters, ELA or what, you know, this is the piece that brings upon those questions for exploration. That's the piece that has to go on the screen.
Gotcha.
Kind of thing.
That's a good point.
It is a good point. And I just don't know enough about the types of files that this exact, you know, type of program would use and what the ease of access would actually be like. We do have a call set up with the rep for this product just to go over some details and talk about some high level stuff.
Yes.
But we can come back with some more details.
For sure. And just to be very specific, I would imagine right now using a room like that is like covered in dry erase.
Yeah.
Areas that we can write on, whether it's like even, you know, on the walls or whatever with like one large screen that the whole class comes in, everybody sits down, we're focused in one direction. I mean, I love the curvature. I think it's amazing. It feels like it might be just a little too specific.
Yeah. Do you like the idea of writing on all having?
Absolutely, because the brainstorming happens. I mean, most of these curriculums have specific questions that go with the artworut. What is happening in the foreground? I mean, we could.
Seeing a lot of nodding heads.
We could totally. I mean, this is just. I'm speaking from an ELA standpoint, but Caitlin, like same with math.
Yes.
Totally, shapes, all the things going up there. Yeah. Math, shapes.
If I may comment, this type of thing is used, at least before I retired, is used at GM for engineering products. But it's a very sophisticated 3D CAD type program that uses projective geometry to actually maintain all the, you know, the image. So it's not just I plug my laptop in and I go. There's this whole series of translations you need before you get there to do something like that.
I guess would they have teacher training then?
Yes,
What does that look like physically as far as like what we'll be using to project the image? I understand there's a projector, but how do we send the image to the projector to be within that area?
Right. Embarrassed. I just truly don't know enough about where the actual components, where they would live and how that exactly works.
Well, but you guys make a really good point too.
Yeah.
This is a very specific program. I don't think you just go and plug your laptop in and I want to pull up this image. Like it's not that easy. It's very specific to the type it's being utilized. And it's interesting though, because talking about it, it maybe evolves in thinking of instead of it being the specific product and fully 360 immersion and all of that, it could be a series of projection, video, separate walls that still create a space, but it's more of an active learning type space where, all right, here's our focus point, now we're breaking off into these separate zones, or you can have multiple screens going, because it is very easy on a monitor or a projection to just throw up an image on there. There's a lot of back end and the server connection, but none of that's like a specific product or some kind of template you need. And it's interesting, if you talk about ease of use, and especially with teachers and academia, if you can't walk up and plug into it and use it, people aren't going to. Totally. You're going to have this really expensive room that nobody can use because it's just too hard.
Totally.
So we want to avoid that. And so it'll be interesting. We need to educate ourselves on it further and get you some more info on this product. But from what you're talking about, the head's nodding, it's like maybe this product isn't in. It's more of talking with one of our tech consultants of, all right, well, let's start looking at separate components that can all link together or be separate and be a lot more user-friendly.
I think what's important for this group is the fact that there is interest in it to keep exploring that route and to keep potentially going down that road. So I think that's what we're that's a successful meeting. I think just to have that note.
Something along these lines will match what we are required to teach already, and that is a big win, a huge win. Something I think we would be excited about.
Okay. Well, I know we're over time, so I wanna wrap things up. But if anybody has any other closing thoughts, let us know. But otherwise, thank you so much. Thank you for a great evening. Thank you for all the feedback, and we'll be back again on
2 weeks. We'll see we've got our final meeting with you all, and that meeting is going to be more specific. So if you see meeting 4 up there, it's going to be more specific to everything we've heard here, consolidate into a presentation, into a 3D fly-through. They'll have a lot more materiality to it, but it's going to be more showing you, instead of a series of options, and just have a collection of everything we've heard in this option and go through it. It's not going to say that that's the final option or you even like it, but it'll be a great point for you to say, like, we're going in the right direction, we're not going in the right direction, you like these things from the time, so we can keep evolving it. So this is our last meeting, and then we'll take recommendations to the board, of course.
Thank you everyone for your time tonight. We look forward to bringing back some more ideas. Colleen?
Oh, no, thank you for coming. Oh, we're adjourned.